Welcome to Limitless with Lisa Z, a podcast about how to move from inspiration to action and bring our dreams to life. I'm Alyssa Cesarini, and each week I'll release 2 podcasts, one where I walk you through action steps about how to make your dreams a reality, with another podcast in which I interview amazing changemakers from all over the world. This podcast isn't just for listening. Take notes and take action. Let's ignite and change the world together. Y'all, it is week 3, and I am so excited to interview and talk to and get inspired by the amazing Alyssa Cesarini. Alyssa is an entrepreneur, activist, and mental health professional. She has a passion for equality and justice to the underserved, underrepresented, and minority populations, especially domestic workers, including nannies, which we talk about today. She is committed to creating sustainable childcare solutions for the families of all dynamics and creating healthy working relationships in their homes. She took her passion and turned it into a business, and we're super excited to talk to her about this today. So, Alyssa, what has been inspiring to you today?
Today, I woke up feeling very inspired because last night, my business partner and I, Carmen Garcia from Hudson Staffing, we spoke at Pace University pretty late last night, so I didn't really process what was happening. But it was really inspiring to just hear the interest of these young, budding entrepreneurs in the, staffing and recruiting space. And they were just really excited about a lot of things about the business that for me are usually mundane. So it was just like a reaffirming of, the things we don't love to do in business, but why it's so important. So this morning, that was kind of how I've been feeling all day, just riding the wave of like inspiring the youth.
Yeah, I although, and I hope they don't get mad at me, although I find Gen Z a little annoying sometimes, they are super inspiring because they're really like, we're going to talk about this and how you've done it, but like they really bring their passion for what they want to change in the world to everything.
Yeah, they really do. I mean, I think it's nice to see the interest in an industry that I think is really, important, which is why I'm in it.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about you and your business in 1 second, but in general, like what is inspiring to you in general as a mission-driven business owner?
I mean, I talk to people every day that inspire me as, somebody who's working with domestic workers. So there's really not a day that goes by that I'm not inspired by somebody's adversity. Most of the women I'm working with are immigrant or Black women. So there's just a different level of just profound admiration at times for people who continue to keep going and doing this work and showing up, again, being faced with adversity on a daily basis, whether that's in the workplace or, in the city they live.
So tell me about what this podcast is really about and why I started with inspiration is how people turn inspiration into action. So tell me about your company, what you do at Innovative Youth Care.
So I started Innovative Youth Care in 2014 after I stopped working with Yankees pitcher CC Sabathia. I was working for his 4 children as their nanny. And while I was working as a nanny, I just saw so much opportunity in this industry where women were still not being treated fairly. The majority of these women did not look like me. I'm a white woman. Most of these women were immigrant or Black women. Also teaching me a lot of what I knew as a nanny. So there's a lot of just conflict for me internally, being, raised by immigrant parents and really seeing how hard these individuals work to, be in a job and secure a position that works for them and something they're happy doing. So I felt it was my purpose to create an agency that represents them fairly and with the respect and dignity that they deserve, because it's a very underrepresented industry, domestic work, and specifically in the staffing industry. So when I started Innovative Youth Care in 2014, it was with the intention to be an anti-racist agency in order to ensure protections that, really lawmakers are unable to guarantee these workers because laws may get passed, but people break laws, as we know, and they don't typically follow them if they're in a position of privilege or power where they don't need to. And those are the majority of the people that are employing domestic, support in their home.
Right. So you're a nanny. You're seeing, like, I thought it was really interesting. You said you were inspired by the adversity. So you're witnessing as a nanny what's happening with other nannies who are teaching you. But then there's this moment of action where you decide, like, I mean, we see a lot of injustices all the time, but you're like, I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to start this company. Do you remember that as a specific moment, or like what inspired you to actually do it?
I had finished getting my master's. I had originally went to college at Penn State and went to school for journalism and English. And after I moved to New York City in the early 2000s, I slowly recognized I was going to have a career in public relations. I thought I was, but I slowly realized quickly realized that was not the case for me. So that's what I initially went to school for. So when I became a nanny, which was also a very random occurrence for me, I had never nannied before in my life. I wanted to do something that could support me in this new role, caring for somebody else's kids. So I went back to school for psychology, and it was the combination of really like learning and understanding how people operate and human behavior, and what was happening with one of the children I was working with who was diagnosed with a language delay while I was there. Just really seeing how I could apply what I was learning into my job was very important. And being in this position, working for a Black family, being a white woman, I saw a lot of things that a lot of other people would not have seen, in combination with people that weren't working in the home with me, just my peers and other people that were doing the same job. So I feel like a combination of like what I was learning at that time, and leaving the Sabathia family when it was time, and I graduated with my master's, and doing part-time work with other families, and just seeing another harsh reality of how other staff were being treated in these very wealthy homes in New York City. And it was shocking. And yeah, I mean, I think that was the last straw for me. And that was only a month after I had left being a nanny. I just woke up in bed one day and I thought that I was going to create a company, and children that grow up in very busy, wealthy households get counseling, and be like a therapist mentor for kids that are feeling, disconnected or have identity issues. But that wasn't the avenue I took. I woke up and felt like, there are so many people that are in really bad situations, and I just didn't see anybody else telling these stories or sharing these very harsh and kind of ugly realities that still exist here in New York City.
Right. Yeah, I think that you said something really important, which is like you saw it, so you decided to do it with your skill set. But it's not like there was just this like book that was like how to create a business that's not like all the other businesses in this space, and I'm just going to do it. Like you just have to kind of be like, I'm going to go and learn along the way.
Yeah, literally. I mean, I'm definitely not your quintessential entrepreneur by any means. I mean, you just have to take the leap. And the goal for me has always been to create something that would impact people's lives for the better forever, and also just the vibration of the existing of this entity, that people would be aware of its existence, and that in and of itself was enough for people to recognize there's a big problem here. Domestic workers have no rights, and people are just trampling over these individuals, and nobody's going to say something because the people that are benefiting are the 1% or your favorite football player or your favorite singer or your favorite actress. So, nobody wants to hear that those people they love so much might also be predatory employers.
Right. Do
They
you,
may not, they may not be, you know,
yeah. And do
who
you
you
feel
think
like
they are.
those people choose to treat their domestic employees like that? I mean, there's got to be a variety of ways, but they're coming to you for something different. Do you find that people are coming to you specifically because they're looking for something different, or they get that education by coming to you?
I think both. I think parents are fed up with working with impersonal staffing agencies. They know that, someone like myself exists. I'm a referral based business, which is, common for agencies. But I think a lot of parents just trust, what I'm advising them. I've been in the world on the side of the domestic worker. And now being somebody who's a counselor and works with, people, parents as a parent coach, and a lot of different capacities in my work. I just think that because parents trust me, they'll trust me when I'm guiding them, depending on where they live, whether it's California, New Jersey, New York, Florida, what the laws are, why that's important. Because when you're not educated on the laws that are necessary to employ somebody in your home as a domestic worker, then you put yourself in a position to, be sued. And there's not a high profile person that I work with that doesn't appreciate that education that I'm providing them, because a lot of agencies are also predatory and will just keep making money off the backs of people that are not aware. They don't know that, if they just paid a little bit more and provided a healthcare stipend, then they wouldn't go through 6 housekeepers a year that keep quitting because they're finding another employer who's doing that. It's very simple. Instead, the inefficiency of staffing agencies is what makes them so profitable. And
Right.
that's why the goal for me was always to put myself out of business and stop selling people, because that's really what staffing agencies do.
Right. Wow, that's fascinating. So you said in the beginning that you're inspired by these nannies, these domestic workers' stories, where I'd imagine a lot of people are like, you get to meet celebrities. And you're saying is the nannies are actually where your inspiration's coming from.
For sure. I mean, I work with some incredible clients, amazing human beings that I think are going against the grain a lot of times amongst their peers who are not these high road employers that understand the value of domestic work. However, when you meet the kinds of women that I meet, it's really impossible to ignore, just again, the adversity. I mean, faced with things that a lot of people can't really comprehend are actually occurring. But for years, domestic workers have been abused in their jobs, raped, not being paid wages. Like, people have abused them on so many levels that have, you know, traumatic impacts throughout their lives. And I think knowing that and being aware of that as an agency is also what's made me successful in our community of domestic workers. Because I mean, people know I'm here to support and uplift, help people recharge, believe that there's a future in this industry if they've been wronged, you know. But a lot of times it's not even, it has nothing to do with me. I mean, these people are continuously, committed, and it's just, a lot of times it's shocking, but they love children, and it's like, it's the most selfless community I've ever been a part of, and I'm very grateful that I'm a part of it.
Yeah, I noticed that. I mean, I live in an area where there's a lot of nannies, and like I'm always struck by when I see nannies, I see them in the elevator, I see them on the street, as like what an amazing job, because they're taking care of a child. And with like you can just see that there's so much love. So it's just like I've noticed that, but I think that a lot of people never think about that those people are working and they have all the same rights as the people who are walking to work on the streets. And that's what
Yep,
you're bringing to the forefront.
exactly.
Yeah. So take me back. You're starting to decide how to do this. How does one start a staffing agency? Like, what did you do?
I reached out to other agencies. in New York City. And I explained to them what I was doing. And as you can imagine, not many people wanted to partner with me. They were like, oh, so you're going to advocate for domestic workers? You're not going to make any money. And that was the case for a while. But I knew that the end goal would be worth it, which would be at least placing one. If I could just place one, I knew that this was possible because I didn't have the capital. I had just left a job where I was making pretty good money, over 100, that maybe 100,000 a year, with, health insurance and all the stability. And I had left that job and had none of those things, and it was really about partnerships, networking in New York. There are so many different groups and there's so much access in the city where you can meet other entrepreneurs. And I worked out of a co-working space, the Center for Social Innovation, which was pivotal to my success, being able to connect with other entrepreneurs that were working, and making money, but also, fighting a social issue. So there was a lot of synergy in this location. There was a lot of events happening. I was able to talk to people, whether it was about, marketing or a CRM, what would be the best thing for me. And it was those relationships that really helped me because I was surrounded by some really successful people doing, really big things in the early, 2014 time.
Yeah. Yeah. I always think about that quote, like we're the product of the people we surround ourselves with. So you like found the people to surround yourself with. Now, I can't imagine from 2014 to 2023 is just all roses. This became very successful. Like what kind of roadblocks, issues did you hit and how did you handle it?
I think the biggest was that I had to turn away, clients. I had to turn away people that weren't willing to, pay on the books or offer vacation or offer paid time off or, pay a little bit more per hour because the goal was to get people jobs and get them what they wanted instead of them just taking whatever they could get. And I think everybody knows, in life, you can either make choices or life makes choices for you. And a lot of these individuals have been on the latter end for most of their lives. They just take what they can get. People, mostly white people that are employers are telling them, being paid on the books is not the way to go. It's so much better if you're paid cash. It's so much easier. I mean, these are things they've indoctrinated into a lot of these workers' minds. So it's like helping them trust you and create a shift so that they can step into this new, way of working and giving them, more access, whether that is for their child to go to college because now they have a job that's paying them on the books and they can reflect an income, or getting an apartment. We see a lot of domestic workers not having a place to live once they're a certain age and they're not being paid on the books. And yeah, I mean, those things were really, really hard for me to overlook because I knew what the end goal would be of me just saying, yes, I can find you somebody for $15 an hour for 50 hours a week. I knew that person was not going to be okay. And yeah, I mean, I couldn't afford to live in my apartment. I had to give up my car. I had to move home. And, it wasn't easy, but I knew that I was creating value, whether it was 2 people or 3 people. And I stayed committed to that feeling. And I am a spiritual person. I'm not, the Dalai Lama, but I had and still have a very committed spiritual practice where I really believe in what I'm doing. I believe in that feeling. As hard as it gets, when you don't have money to, go out with your friends or I just realized there was such a bigger success for me that none of those things really mattered. So I feel like, losing money and having to choose, the loyalty to this community over the opportunity was probably the hardest thing to do. Not now, but in the beginning for sure.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think all entrepreneurs, I've felt it, have that day where you're like, this isn't what I'm about. This is not my mission. This aren't my ethics, but that's a dollar. You know, when you're in a situation where you're trying to take care of yourself, it's hard. So you were faced with that. You have practices, but like, what are some of the things that kept you going throughout that time?
Oh, my family.
Mm,
Family and friends. I mean, when people really believe in you, I think just surrounding yourself with people that are just dreamers, people that are doing, um, doing the work to show up for the work that they're doing, to make money. Because it's not just about, doing work. You have to work on yourself in order to show up in these spaces and do this type of work. I mean, and I can speak for myself personally. It's not easy,
hmm
hearing a lot of really sad stories and sharing space and really listening, like actively listening to people. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And if I didn't have family and friends that remind you of who you are, which I think is just the essence of beautiful relationships, people that can remind you of the love you are and your ability to bring love to people's lives, and how just a smile can shift somebody, and just having the people that remind you of the simple things about yourself that matter. And I think we forget when we're dealing with imposter syndrome, or a bad relationship. Like, you're going to meet people and let them go in your life, especially when you're an entrepreneur. You're going to meet a lot of people, and a lot of people are going to tell you how much they love your idea, and a lot of those people aren't going to show up. um, and just having the people that always do. I mean, you can't. It's the reason I do what I do. It's the reason I'm able to do what I'm doing, and why I continue to show up. I know that I have an amazing force behind me besides the universe, and those are people that I love.
yeah, yeah, that's amazing. So you were talking earlier about the co-working space you used to work at and talking about, so I think that this is interesting. I think about this a lot, is businesses that make social change as opposed to nonprofits. Because obviously we can have an advocacy group, we can have a nonprofit, but I actually think businesses are more powerful. Um, how do you keep your mission in mind while you're also a for-profit business?
It's easy for me, because I don't collect a profit unless I'm on my mission. If
Right.
I'm not educating a parent on how to employ a domestic worker the right way to ensure, longevity and to avoid turnover, which is what every parent wants if they're hiring a nanny, I can only do that by educating them. So
Right.
I don't make money unless I'm doing my job right. And that's kind of how I've positioned it, so that, no matter who works with me now or in the future, they understand that it's this way or no way. Um, so yeah, I think for me it has, actually, because it's so purpose driven, and there are goals of where we want to take this. Yeah, it's been easy, and I say that candidly,
Yeah.
not in the sense that we're just rolling in the dough over here. It's not what's happening. But yeah, it's been easy because, again, I really believe in this. I Yeah, I believe in it, and yeah.
Yeah, I just love this. I wrote it down, like I'm not making money unless I'm following my mission. And like that's very incentivizing. We need money and I want to follow this mission. I like the idea of tying those two things together in your business. Tell me about, so because I've looked at your social media, I follow you. Tell me about the nanny parties. That just looks like a good time. I'm like, can I come? Can I go?
You could totally come. They are. I mean, like I said, I love this community. I grew up with my dad, who was from Italy. I really admired him. I thought he was like, God. he had an accent. We lived in a town where nobody had accents. I mean, it was a very boring, suburban town in Pennsylvania. So I think growing up with an immigrant father and like then being in the world of domestic workers, I already like loved these women just because it felt so close to home.
Mm-hmm.
And just hearing their stories and yeah, I mean, it is just the knowing of these women and some men. You know, we have nannies who do this work also. I mean, there's nothing more profound than consistency for me in relationships. And I've been doing this for now 9 years. I've owned my agency, and these are people that consistently show up. They treat you like family. I mean, I have people come to my office, they'll go to Colombia to visit their town, and their town in Colombia, and they're coming back with like indigenous goods. Alyssa, we want you to try this. I want you to try this dulce de leche, or, it doesn't matter. There's like it's so much like family. And, we also like to have some wine and cheese and, whatever we might be catering, vegan food. Sometimes we do international, nights, but we are always doing this for them. This is our treat. If we go to a bar, it's our treat. Like, you should be rewarded consistently. And a lot of employers, will do that by providing yearly bonuses and things. But we like to keep the people that are committed to working with our agency excited about it. And yeah, I mean, no one else is doing it, and we make money. We're making money with these people. So I can't imagine not reciprocating and being like, great job. Like, you just got another job with a client. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it really is, it's a blast. I mean, and some of the funniest, most amazing people, and they're all so selfless. I mean, it's just a room filled with really good human beings. They're trying to clean up after the party. It's like, no, you're not working. You don't need to help. It's just, and it's really nice to just be surrounded by just such loving people who a lot of them I call my friends. A lot of them I call my friends.
Yeah, I think that there's something really profound in there, which you don't see in a lot of traditional companies, which is like a lot of magical things happen when you treat somebody who's working for you like a human, and there's friendship. And, like, you followed your passion and curiosity you got from your dad and took it into creating a business that also serves. And you're like, my Italian father, so I give people food. That's what I heard. And I was like, that makes a
It's
lot of
pretty
sense.
much.
Yeah, it sounds
Yeah,
like.
I definitely grew up in that household. That was our household. I mean, always feeding people.
Yeah. It sounds like you took what you learned from your dad and your family and like translated that into work. Do you feel like that's true?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm like a very easy person to read and see why, if you know me, why she does what she does and how she does it. I mean, I'm kind of an open book. I'm
Yeah.
very proud of that.
So, if this podcast is about turning inspiration into action, which you did, which we're talking about. So if somebody's like, I'm scared, I'm inspired, I care about these things, what advice would you offer them?
I mean, I think you have to be afraid. You gotta have the yin and the yang. If you're not afraid, then there's no fear or emotion you need to overcome, then you're not facing any adversity. And I think anything great, I mean, it comes with a struggle. I can't stress it enough. Nothing's gonna happen overnight. And I think it's, in the entrepreneurial world, I think, especially with now having so much access, well, some people, depending on, who you are and where you're at, there is a lot of access to investors, and the idea of, getting that big investor and doing, A, B, C, and D. I think that's never been something that's really motivated me. I think just focusing on the communities that I'm impacting, like genuinely submerging myself and becoming a part of a community that is not mine, and welcoming, other people into this community and building that has been way more impactful and important because for the beginning years I was in a lot of fear, and it came from the lack of support I felt that I didn't have in the entrepreneur community. I was surrounded by people that were getting investors and skyrocketing, and little old me is sitting here in New York City with like a real life community of people that are suffering, and you know, it just wasn't happening, and I think when I finally accepted that, like, this is okay, like I can be really afraid of what I see happening, but it might also mean losing some friends that don't have the same values that I have,
Mm-hmm.
because you know character is character and means everything to me. I mean, you know me, Lisa. I find it's just the most important attribute for anybody I associate with, and I just love to be around people that are honest and real. And I think just the women doing this work again are, a lot of them are fed up with how hard it is to get through in this industry.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think when you find your people, the fear dissipates. It never
mm-hmm.
goes away. I mean, ever.
That
I
is
mean, the
true.
imposter syndrome is real. I mean, it never ever goes away. There's always someone or something that's going to make you question what you're doing, and you just have to stay rooted in what your belief is, and just trust it. Trust your gut. When you're alone and you're still, and your gut is telling you this is right, you're exactly where you're supposed to be, and you're doing exactly what you're supposed to do. Trust it. Don't fight it. You don't need anybody else to validate it. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe like your mom or your best friend, like whatever. Like I get, we all do need people, but sometimes it's just, you just need to look at yourself and say, you got this. There's a reason you had this download for whatever idea you're working on.
Yep.
Just trust it.
Yeah. You said a couple of things that were interesting. One is like, I also built a business from scratch and everybody's getting funding, but the thing I always thought about is then you owe those people something. It can be a percentage of your business, it can be taking on their ethics and ideas. So, kudos for doing that. And I think a lot of times you can feel like a small fry, but I was like, I want
Mhm.
to do it this way. And what I heard you say was embrace the fear and then be persistent. Because you're 9 years in, and do you feel like, oh, now I've got it, now I understand?
No, I
Right.
mean, I'm constantly learning, constantly learning.
Hmm.
Yeah, that doesn't go away. I think just if you're, the most important thing is just maintaining the authenticity of like what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be hard for people if it's truly something you feel you have purpose doing and why you're doing it. I think it's a telltale, sign of when you could see when things, an entrepreneur might be failing at something or not doing something because they might not really feel that, purpose in the mission they're on. And
Yeah.
it might be time to change it.
Yeah. So you have a partner. How do you choose who you want to work with? Is it similarly like who aligns with you?
Well, in 2014, when I started my agency, Carmen was working at Quintessentially People, which is a concierge service. And she was the only person who actually gave me the time of day. So she lucked out. Now she's stuck with me forever. Um, she was the only person who wanted to talk to me. I called agencies in LA. I mean, now it's interesting because, these are my peers now. These are my competitors now. Um, and I'm just not a competitive person, which is a blessing. Um, yeah, that is a blessing, I guess, in disguise. But yeah, she was the only person to say, I love that. My parents are from Cuba. Ding, ding, ding. And we were able to share and self disclose about, what we experienced as kids and watching our fathers or, you know, mothers going through whatever they had to go through and facing that adversity. And she believed in what I was doing. And whether or not she was allowed to or not, I mean, she was partnering with me at Quintessentially People and then started her agency 5 years ago, which is Hudson Staffing. And we partner, that way by, sharing clients, sharing candidates. We have, joint events because she's been working in the recruiting and staffing industry for years. And myself, obviously, that's not what my experience was before starting my agency. So it's actually a great combo. We complement one another well, and she's loyal to a fault. Another thing that's huge, we spoke about this last night when we were at Pace University. Partnerships are everything. Relationships are everything. Everything.
Mm-hmm.
And as Carlo Cesarini would say, my father, don't shit where you eat. You don't shit where you eat. Very simple.
Right.
And I know it sounds vulgar, but very simply, if people are doing well by you, just do the same. That's it. And if you're benefiting from people, honor that people are doing something for you. And it's okay to be in gratitude, like a lot.
Especially if they're taking care of your child. Like, I mean, a lot of people do well by me, but I mean, like, that's your most precious asset. So I think that that's really important. I think you said something else, which kind of goes to like the evolution of doing business and stepping out of like traditional structures is that you found a partner who, like, if you find somebody, you can share clients, you can do things like that. And that's a different model than like compete. And you also said these people you were calling initially became your peers, and we never know who's going to become our peers, and we should just be good to people anyway, but you never know. So like
Yes.
maybe just be good to people because it's good and it feels good.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
So Alyssa, you're very inspiring. So I want to ask some questions that I think that there are some key things that allow us to keep moving in action by what we're inspired by. So when was the last time you felt awe?
I think it's just when people um, stand up for others that don't have the privilege or the access to do it for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Working with domestic workers, even during the pandemic, I mean, the realities, the world could see the reality. These individuals, some didn't even have smartphones to claim unemployment. Just really humanizing, experiences that I've been witness to in this industry is a constant awe, and not always in the positive sense, but like, how are we here and it's 2023? How is there no support for domestic workers' rights? And in 2020 we passed intro 339 in New York, because I'm involved with a lot of nonprofits that are fighting to get bills passed so that domestic workers can have more rights. And they were just added to the basic human rights bill in New York City, and intro 339 in 2020. And yeah, that had me in awe. Like, wow, that took a long time, but more like, wow, people don't even know that this is happening and why it's so crazy that it's happening. I think that's what puts me in awe the most, is the lack of awareness, but also I'm pretty aware to know that ignorance is bliss. And if you really understand what that means, it's just a lot easier to be ignorant. And I think a lot of times people are aware, but it's easier to ignore it.
If people want to know more about what they can do or domestic workers' rights, where do you suggest they start?
You can go to my website, and on my website, the About Us page explains exactly what we're doing, why we're doing it, the advocacy we're involved in, and there's a link for you to join Hand in Hand, which is the Domestic Employers Organization. I'm also an affiliate of the Domestic Workers Alliance. However, for parents, that is the most important thing, is getting involved in the Domestic Employers Organization network. Yeah, it's a really important nonprofit that's educating parents on how to be a high road employer.
When was the last time, or when do you feel joy?
I feel joy right now. I mean, I am very grateful for, community, and when I'm around other like-minded people who believe in things outside of ourselves. And yeah, I'm really grateful. I'm even, just grateful for you and, what we're doing right now. Those are the things that make me happy, just seeing relationships follow through. And yeah, I mean, I'm joyous right now.
Good. I like it. What's next for you in the company?
Well, right now we're developing an app called Village, and Village will be an invite-only app similar to care.com, where parents will be able to find childcare, and it will be a safe place for domestic workers to find jobs.
Awesome.
Unlike a lot of, the apps.
So if I've listened to this interview and I'm like obsessed with you, where can people find you on the internet?
On the internet, Instagram, Facebook. I mean, I'm Alyssa Cesarini. That's my name. On LinkedIn, you can call me.
We will put all of this
me,
in the podcast notes, including your phone number.
You can call me. Yeah, I'm there, but I'm not there, if you know what I mean. There's a lot of real life work happening, but I'm there. People DM me, I see it.
Yeah, and they, if people want to know, because I would, it's interesting. I think that like we care about something more when we learn about it. So I bet a lot of people listening to this are like, oh, I didn't know. The thing about New York is fascinating to me because I was like, I'd imagine it's one of the highest concentration of domestic workers. I see it everywhere. So I'm like, oh, so they can go to your website and find out more about that.
Certainly.
You are truly,
and that's,
well, go ahead.
That's www.innovativeyouthcare.com.
Great. We'll put it in the show notes too, so people can find it. Alyssa, you're truly an inspiration, joyfully making change in the world. Thank you. And it was a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you very much, Lisa.
You're welcome. That's it, folks. Another amazing episode of Limitless with Lisa Z. I am inspired and want to give you the homework. Take some notes, take action, do one thing today that can move you towards your dreams. Got feedback? Let us know. You can write to us at lisa@lisazahiya.com or visit us online at lisazahiya.com.